Ladies and gents, hello and welcome back to another video. This is going to be the second part of the iPhone 17 Pro Max charging quirks. I uploaded part one a couple days ago and several users pointed out a few flaws that I made in my testing, and I realized I did do a couple things wrong and we're going to fix those today. So I'm going to revise my testing on a couple different areas, including MagSafe as well as Apple Watch charging, and then we're going to do a much more in-depth charging test and analysis of various devices here with the 17 Pro Max. You can see we've got a nice spread of items. We've got a bunch of different power bricks, all with different wattages. We've got a PS5 controller. We're going to see if that will charge. We've got two spinning hard drives. We've got a 2.5-inch solid state drive there. We've got two Apple Watches with different charging speeds. And we're also going to see if my DJI drone will charge from the iPhone. And then we're going to test an iPad 2nd gen that I've got right here. And last but not least, we are going to see if the iPhone will charge a 2017 12-inch Retina MacBook. So where do we begin? Let's start with the two areas that I let you guys down in during the first part of the video. That's going to be MagSafe and Apple Watch charging. Now, what I went wrong in that video was I used the incorrect charger for Apple Watch. There are two versions of the USB-C Apple Watch charger, and they look almost identical, but they are very different. So if we take a look here at the USB-C end of the cable, you'll notice a slight difference. The cable on my right has a little lip there, and the cable on my left does not. The cable on my left is capable of fast charging Apple Watches. The cable on the right is not, and it is a very subtle difference. You can see side by side, it's even hard to tell them apart. But if you have no lip, then you can fast charge. If you've got the little lip there, then you cannot fast charge. And I made the mistake of only using the slow charger in the previous video. The other error that I made was with MagSafe. So there are also two generations of MagSafe cables, and I have both of them. Unfortunately, I used the wrong one in my original video. So I've got both cables here, and at first glance, they do look almost identical. However, once we start to take a closer look, we will notice some differences. The first of which is, again, the connection down here at the bottom. You'll see the cable on the left has a little lip. The cable on the right does not. The cable on the left is also Apple's older style of sort of a plastic covering versus the one on the right is the newer braided finish. Hopefully that shows up for you guys. And I'm trying to see if we can tell the serial or the model numbers, and it looks like, I don't know if this is going to show up. The one on the right, the fast charger, is EMC 8753, and on the left, this one does not appear to have an EMC number on it. Maybe it's somewhere else on the cable. Sometimes they print that information on the actual cable itself, but I don't see it. So you'll have to go off of the box that it comes in. But my mistake in the first video was using the slow MagSafe charger. And as we know, the new iPhone 17 Pro supports the fastest MagSafe charging ever on an iPhone. So we're going to test that out with the newer fast charger MagSafe puck. So in order to do this, I have a rather elaborate setup. We've got a couple cool pieces of tech here that are going to let us see how much power the device is drawing or sending. Now the first is this little USB-C dongle. So you can put power in here, and then it's going to tell you how much power is going back and forth across the device. Now, I've also got this big power bank here. This is from a company called Goal Zero. Not sponsored, but I love their products. They've got some really neat things. And this has an array of outputs. We've got two USB-C ports, two USB-A ports, and an AC adapter there, which we can turn on, and then we can actually plug in something like this, and we can measure and see how much power it is drawing. So we've got a couple different areas here to test out the wattage, which is the metric that we're most interested in when talking about charging devices like these. So enough talk. Here's the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and it is at 33% battery, so that should be low enough for us to reach high speeds of fast charging. Let's go ahead and begin with MagSafe. So Apple claims the 17 Pro is the fastest charging iPhone ever over USB-C as well as MagSafe. We're going to put that to the test right now. Here we have a 140 watt USB-C power adapter. You can get this with a MacBook Pro 14 or 16 inch. We're going to connect that here to the power bank. We're going to turn on AC power, and it should begin drawing about 3 watts right there. So that is baseline. It looks like 4 watts on this one. And we are going to connect our MagSafe chargers. We're going to start off with the slow charger. Keep in mind this one has the little lip and it is not a braided cable. So we're going to plug in there and we're going to connect to the iPhone. Now you can see it jumped up there a little bit in wattage and it is back down to 4, so let's connect. And the iPhone is charging. We'll set it right there and we're going to observe the values on the display here. It actually takes a while for the charging speed to reach its maximum. So it looks like we've peaked around 15 watts of power on the older slow charging MagSafe cable. That lines up pretty well with Apple's claim. I think they say 15 watts is the max on that older cable. So let's go ahead and disconnect that and we're going to plug in the newer fast charging MagSafe connection. Now I've got the 2-meter one here, so there's a lot of cable to deal with. But this variant does come in 1 or 2 meter options. And again, this is the braided USB-C cable with no lip on the MagSafe puck. So we're drawing 4 watts at baseline. Let's connect it to the iPhone. And we are charging. So we're up to 15 watts. That's where the slow charger finished. Let's see how high the fast charging MagSafe cable is able to go. So it seems like the wattage increases in increments. It was at 15 and then it kind of jumped up to 20 and sat there. Then it jumped to 25 and hung out there for a little bit. And now we are at 29 watts, just crossed over to 30. I'm going to put this down and let it sit for a couple minutes and then speed through the video and see if that number changes. And it looks like we have maxed out at 32 watts. That seems to be the limit here for our second generation fast charging MagSafe puck. So let's go ahead and put that down and move on to our next test. So the other area that I had incorrect information about in my first video was with Apple Watch charging. And like MagSafe, there are 2 generations of the cables as we discussed. And I'm going to show you guys what the old one is capable of charging. And we've got 2 generations of Apple Watches here. I've got a Series 5, which I don't think supports fast charging. And we have a Series 10, which does support fast charging. We're going to see how quickly they can charge from the iPhone, but in order to do that, I have to plug them in to this dongle here and then plug that dongle into the iPhone. And you can see on the little display here, it's going to show us the voltage and the amps, and then it's going to give us wattage. So keep in mind, this is the slow charging cable on an Apple Watch that does not support fast charging. And it looks like we are at about 0.7 watts. I believe this will jump up to close to 1, maybe 1.5 at the very max. The Apple Watch is actually pretty slow to start charging. It kind of takes a minute for it to figure out how much power it wants. So I'll speed through this video and we'll see if that number changes. All right, so we are up at it was almost at 3 watts. And for whatever reason, when the watch screen turns on, that wattage goes back down to close to 1. And then if it sits for a while off, it will go back up. I'll see if I can make it do that. Okay, you can see there it's jumping up to 2, 2.3, 2.5, kind of jumps around, 2.75 there. So it seems like that is the max that this Apple Watch can charge with. Now let's try with the fast charging cable. All right, here we go. Go ahead and plug that in here. And then we'll try again with the Apple Watch Series 5, and we'll see if this fast charging cable makes any difference on this older Apple Watch, even though it doesn't support fast charging. And it seems like the wattage is maxing out at just a little bit over 2, 2.15, 2.2. And now it's going a little higher, closer to 3, 2.75, which was the max we saw with the slow cable. All right, now let's try it on an Apple Watch that supports fast charging. Here we've got the Series 10. Go ahead and plug that in and see what happens. All right, after a couple minutes, the Apple Watch sure took its sweet time getting there, but we are at 2.5 watts and it appears to be holding very steady there. I was expecting to see this number go a little bit higher, and it's interesting that it is not higher than what we saw with the slow cable. Now I want to go through the power bricks here and see how fast they can charge the iPhone and what the limit is for the different power bricks. We'll start small and work our way up. So we've got the 18 watt USB-C and we've got the 20 watt. You can see the 20 watt does say 20 right there. The 18 does not. This one is a little bit harder to find. This was actually sold with the iPhone 11 series. and then Apple discontinued it. Interestingly, Apple sold this for 1 year, and then with the iPhone 12, they removed it and said, well, everyone should have one of these by now, so we took it out, even though they only sold this for one generation of iPhones. I think that was a little bit sly on their part. But we're gonna begin with the 18 watt here. We'll plug that into the AC power. And then I've got a 240 watt USB-C cable. This is the one from Apple. So this should give us more than enough headroom to test the charging capabilities of the 17 Pro Max with these different power bricks. All right, we are plugged in and charging. And right away, this thing jumped up to 21 watts. And that is the 18 watt charger. So that is actually a little bit interesting. I guess 18 plus the 3 we saw at baseline gives us 21. So I guess that math does check out. So that's pretty boring. 21 there for the 18 watt. We'll go ahead and try the 20 watt. And this one goes up to 23. So I think that checks out. You pretty much take the wattage on the charger, add about 3 to it, because that's how much you're losing essentially in the process of converting the power here. And it looks like we're drawing a full 20 watts from the 20 watt adapter. Next on the list, we've got a small adapter here. This is a 30 watt power adapter. This one came with, I believe, the Apple M1 MacBook Air is where you could get this. This replaced the 29 watt that shipped with the 12-inch MacBook models, as well as, I believe, the Intel MacBook Airs that supported USB-C. I could be wrong about that, but I know that the 29 watt was the original, and then Apple updated it to the 30 watt charger that we've got here. And right away, we jumped really quickly up there to 33 watts of power. So this iPhone is completely saturating this power adapter and drawing the full amount from it. All right, and moving on from the 30 watt, next on our list, we have another MacBook power adapter. This one is a 61 watt. This came with the 13-inch MacBook Pro models, I believe, starting with the 2016 13-inch MacBook Pro model. This is the adapter that shipped with. Let's see what happens here. I believe this is going to be too high of a wattage for the iPhone to completely max out. We'll see how high it goes. We went really quickly up there to 40 watts, and I believe 40 watts is potentially the max for this iPhone to charge outside of the new 40 watt with 60 watt dynamic power adapter that Apple released. Unfortunately, I don't have one of those to test out, but I believe the iPhone can potentially pull 60 watts from that for a very limited amount of time, and then it drops back down to 40. I am not 100% sure about that, so don't quote me. I'm sure there's a bunch of other videos of people testing that new power adapter. But it seems like 40 watts is the most that this iPhone is able to pull from this power adapter here, and I imagine that is the same number we're going to see for these next two. So up next, we have a 87 watt. This came with the 15-inch MacBook Pro models starting in 2016, and we're going to plug that in. I'm sure we're still going to get about 40 watts of power being drawn from this one. Okay, that's interesting. Only 30 watts. I wonder why, if that's because this is the older adapter. I'll show you guys how you can tell that in a minute, or if the iPhone is hot and it actually doesn't feel warm at all. So I don't think it's the iPhone that's causing this. I think for some reason, 30 watts is the max from this older USB-C power adapter. So this was the, what did I say, 87 watt. And you'll notice if we compare these two side by side, the one on the left has a metal frame around the USB-C port. The one on the right has a plastic frame, and it's also painted white. So the older ones have this metal frame, and I would venture to say that if you have an older one, it's going to max out at 30 watts for whatever reason. The newer plastic ones are able to go up to 40. So that's a bit interesting. Now, to confirm that theory, or at least get close to confirming it, we're going to try with the 140 watt power adapter. This is a newer model. It's got the white rim there on the USB-C port. Let's connect the iPhone and see how much power we can draw. Okay, and as suspected, we got up to 43 watts of power, which is going to put that on par with the 43 watts we saw with the much smaller 61 watt power adapter. So that's very interesting. I was not expecting to find that the older USB-C power bricks with the metal USB-C port do not charge the iPhone as fast as the new ones. That is something that I believe has not been advertised at this point. All right, that's cool to see. Now, one thing I do want to find out is if the USB-C cable matters. So this is Apple's 240 watt cable. I've got a few other cables we can test this out with. So here's another authentic Apple USB-C cable. This is the kind that used to come with the iPads. This is not a braided one. This one's several years old at this point. Let's see if this will transmit the whole 40 watts of power to the iPhone. And it looks like it will, no problems. Okay, next up I have a very cheap cable that I probably should not use to charge my devices. I believe I bought this on Amazon. It was a pack of 3 and I think it was like $10 total. I got it because it's braided, it looks nice, it feels nice, it looks identical to the Apple cables. It's also 2 meters long, which is really nice, but this is not an authentic Apple cable. I don't even know what brand this is. But let's see if this thing will transmit 40 watts to the iPhone. Okay, and it will. It actually went up to 44, 45 for a second there. I don't know if that's just the cable that's not as efficient. So the cable is actually drawing a couple more watts in order to deliver that 40 watts to the iPhone or what. But I'm a bit surprised that this cable can do that much power. All right, real quick, I do have the new AirPods Pro 3s, and let's see how fast these are capable of charging. So for the sake of my own products here, I'm gonna go back to the authentic Apple cable, and we're gonna see how fast these charge from the power brick here. So we got 3 watts, we're gonna add whatever number comes up after this. All right, we got to 4 watts, so looks like we're pulling about 1 watt here. Interestingly, I don't know if you guys saw that, but the AirPods kind of pulsate here, this little indicator, when it's charging. At least it did there for a second. I don't know if that showed up for you guys, but let's see what happens if we, actually let's do this. Let's connect this thing and see what this shows since we're dealing with such low numbers here. So the AirPods are drawing less than 1 watt of power. So these things really just sip on the energy here. Maybe they are all the way charged. Let me see if that's the case. No, not the case. The AirPods themselves are charged, but the case only has like 30% battery, so it should be charging as fast as it can here, and that is charging at less than 1 watt of power. So that's really interesting. These things do not require much energy at all. Let's see if they charge with that same speed from the iPhone. And actually looks like they take a little bit more power. 0.85, 0.9 watts seems to be a tad bit higher than what we saw before. So that is a bit interesting. Seems like the AirPods might charge faster from the iPhone. Kind of hard to say on that one. Okay, now I want to test something that I actually forgot about. I didn't mention this earlier, but I've got the older Apple MagSafe battery pack here. This still uses a Lightning connection. And obviously, it fits on the iPhone, and it charges it just fine. But what I'm curious about is if the iPhone will charge any faster or slower with that MagSafe battery connected. Now, the iPhone is capable of reverse charging that MagSafe battery pack. As far as I know, that is the only device that the iPhone can reverse charge. So if we connect here, so our iPhone's plugged into USB-C power, we should get up to 43 watts there on the screen. And we do, that's good to see. That speed is the same. So that's interesting. And although I'm sure with this connected, in fact, I know with this connected, there's gonna be some more heat because not only is the iPhone being wirelessly charged, the MagSafe pack is wirelessly charging. So these are both areas where there's gonna be heat generated, both in the sending and the receiving of that electricity. So this is gonna get hot very quick. And I'd imagine if you have it plugged in like this, and you connect it to power, I believe it's gonna thermal throttle that wattage pretty quickly. All right, we got a couple more things to test here, and that involves seeing what the iPhone is capable of powering. So we saw the AirPods, we've seen Apple Watches. Now, what about a PS5 controller? Will it charge? Let's go ahead and get our little dongle connected here. And I am expecting this to charge. I'd imagine you could probably plug this into your iPhone and play games that way. And it looks like, yeah, you can see the controller has lit up orange like it's charging. And on our screen, it is pulling hardly any power at all. 0.35 watts, 0.4 watts now. That's pretty low. All right, what's gonna happen if we plug it into a MacBook? I showed you guys earlier, I've got the 12-inch MacBook. This was Apple's last revision of it. This is the 2017 model. And I have it turned off completely because I want to see if the iPhone is capable of charging the MacBook versus the MacBook being on. I guarantee it would charge the iPhone instead. So if we plug in, what's going to happen? Okay, you can see that we have 4 watts of power going into the MacBook. You can see that area is indicating the direction of charge. And to further prove that point. The iPhone is not charging. You can see that we are not charging up there. So now what happens if we turn the MacBook on? Is it going to continue to charge the MacBook, or is it going to switch, and will the MacBook charge the iPhone? That is the question. Okay, so far the iPhone is still charging the MacBook. I bet that's something you did not expect to see today. An iPhone 17 Pro Max charging a 2017 Retina MacBook. So let's go ahead and log in here. And if we check up here, I don't know if this is going to show up for you guys. I'll zoom in. You can see that the battery does indicate it's charging. It says not charging because it's only taking 3.6 watts right now, which is not enough to charge the computer as well as keep it running. But interestingly, the iPhone is charging the MacBook. What if we disconnect and then plug in again? I'd imagine that flow is going to reverse. And no, we're not going to trust that. And nothing. No device is being charged here. The iPhone's not charging and the MacBook's not charging. Okay, now the MacBook is wanting a software update, so maybe there is a compatibility problem here. Not going to do that right now, but interesting to see the iPhone is able to charge the MacBook. All right, we got a couple more things to test. We've got some hard drives over here and a solid state drive. We're going to see if the iPhone is capable of powering these. I know you can plug in an SSD into the iPhone and use it for video recording, but can it power a 1 terabyte, 5400 RPM, 2.5-inch hard drive? This one was actually pulled from a MacBook. Not that that really means much for compatibility. And it is being powered. I don't know if you guys can see that red light there that indicates power is going into the hard drive. And it is pulling 1 watt. And I can feel the hard drive spinning. The hard drive did not show up inside the Files app either. I am not going to show that because I don't want to have to blur out all the files that are there. But it seems like the hard drive, while it is spinning, it seems like it's not going at its full speed. 1 watt I don't think is enough. Let's see what happens if we plug it into the power bank. Yeah, and it's drawing more power, and I can actually hear the hard drive seem to have spun up at a faster speed there. So it seems like the iPhone does not output enough power for the 2.5-inch hard drive. And I'm sure this one's not going to work either. This is a 5 terabyte, 2.5-inch hard drive. Look how thick that bad boy is. I don't know if this actually needs more power or not, but I kind of assumed it would. Oh, and it is taking more power. And let's see if you guys can hear that. I'm going to hold it up to the mic. I don't know if that shows up sound-wise for you guys, but this is taking more power, and I feel like it is spinning at its maximum speed. Inside of settings, I'm not seeing anything that would indicate a hard drive connected, but again, I'm not 100% sure where that information might be. Hard to say. Okay, what about an SSD? Here is a 2.5-inch solid-state drive. It's a 2 terabyte drive. Let's go ahead and plug this into the iPhone. And this is pulling 2.5 watts, so I suppose the SSD uses less power than the hard drive. Now, I wonder if this is going to show up anywhere on the iPhone. I could have swore, in fact, I know that you can record video to external drives with the newer iPhones. But unfortunately, I do not know where that would be inside of settings. And perhaps you have to format the drive in a specific way. I just don't know. Okay, well, that's a little bit boring. I guess it can power the drives, but I don't know if they show up or what the deal is with those. All right, one last thing that we are going to power with the iPhone is a 2nd generation iPad. You know, I feel like it kind of goes without saying this should charge if we're able to charge a MacBook with the phone. I don't see why we couldn't charge an iPad. So here is the iPad. Wow, that's dusty. So here is the less dusty iPad. We'll go ahead and unlock that. This one's running iOS 6 for what that's worth. So we're going to connect the iPad there. And we got our dongle into the dongle here, and we're going to connect it into the iPhone. All right, and it does charge. We are drawing 4.25 watts, and I'm assuming you guys heard the charging sound there on the iPad. If we look up here in the top right corner, it does say not charging, but that's because we are running at a low wattage. The iPad is in fact charging. It would just take a very long time. Now, this might be a bit of a stretch to say, but I feel like I'm probably the first person in the world who's charged an iPad 2nd gen using an iPhone 17 Pro Max, and potentially also the first person in the world that's charged a 12-inch MacBook with the 17 Pro Max. So if that's not cool, I'm not sure what is. I know I said this was the last thing I wanted to charge, but we do have one more thing. And that's this guy. This is the DJI Mavic Mini 3 Pro. It's a wonderful drone that I use. It does 4K 60 FPS video. It's a fantastic device, and it charges with USB-C. Let's see if the iPhone can charge it. And it looks like it can. You can see the lights are indicating that the drone is charging, albeit quite slowly. These lights will actually go across faster the faster the drone's charging. So that looks like it's about as slow as it can be. And here we are on the little watt reader with 4.11 watts. That, I believe, is definitely not as fast as this thing can charge, because if we connect it over here to the power brick, we jump up to 15, 18 watts, 20. Looks like we maxed out at 27 watts. So the drone's capable of charging a lot faster than the iPhone can do it at. But I guess in a big pinch, if you need your drone to have a little bit of power and you don't really care about your iPhone and you have a lot of time to wait for the drone to have the little bit of power, then you can do it. Okay, so that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this comprehensive look here at the various charging quirks of the iPhone 17 Pro Max, not only how much power it can receive, but also how much power it's capable of outputting. I think the biggest surprises for me were that it can charge a 12-inch MacBook. That is pretty insane to me. It's not something I ever thought I would say or ever test on this channel. Leave me some comments down below. Are there any other things you're interested in seeing about the iPhone, whether it can charge other devices or what kind of things it's capable of charging from? I'm happy to do a third part to this video if there are enough interesting ideas dropped in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I look forward to seeing you in another one of my videos.